All right, everybody, welcome into Average Joe's Sports Talk. We are about to break down Florida versus Georgia, or the matchup formerly known as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It will be played this Saturday in Jacksonville, Florida at 2:30 Central Time p.m. Everybody knows the channel, knows that I'm a Gator fan. Yes, I am biased. I say that before we get started, but breaking this game down and being honest about it, I will do. I have two Alabama fan bookends right here. So they don't have a dog in the fight. They're just going to give their opinion on the game. So going into this game, very intriguing matchup. It's the first time Florida has been healthy since opening day. Truly healthy since opening day. Looking at the stats in this game, it's very intriguing. Georgia's actually favored 4.5 going into this game. Points per game, Florida scoring 32.5. Georgia's scoring around 36. Points allowed per game, Florida's giving up 15.8. Georgia's giving up 10. Total yardage, Georgia's rocking around at 470 something, Florida at 419. So you got all these intriguing stats, and you go back and forth, and then you start breaking it down into individual stats. So you got Trask sitting here at around 1,000, well, 14, right at 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns and 4 picks. Then you got Fromm basically with the same amount of yardage as Trask, but he's got 9 touchdowns and 3 picks. And you would think who's the 3-year starter and then the 3-game starter. You know, the difference in that. Talk about how these stats have came about between the battle of the quarterbacks right off the bat.
Well, I mean, you know, we've got, as you said, one quarterback that's just starting his career. You know, you got one that hadn't played since he's a freshman, and you got one that's one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the country. And especially going by the last couple of weeks, you wouldn't be able to tell which one's which. You know, I mean, Fromm is the kid coming into this year that was, in some people, the number one NFL quarterback in the college football this year. And he's just not lived up to it, and some of that, I'm going to give a pass on some of that because he's got a bunch of freshman receivers he's never worked with before, so that can take time to get on the same page with your guys. Kyle Trask has come in, and he has played in some very, very difficult environments, some high matchups, and it's been impressive to watch him develop and grow. And you know, he's got some weapons on his side that he can take advantage with. You know, Fromm, in a lot of cases, he may have a better run game behind him. So Trask may be having to do more with less. You know, they've got more on his shoulders.
There's no doubt, DeAndre Swift.
So yeah, Swift is one of the better running backs in the country, and Fromm has the talent. It's just not clicking right now for whatever reason. It's not clicking. Kyle Trask, he may be playing a little bit over his head in some cases. So that matchup for me, I'd call it fairly even right now, which is a win for Florida to call that matchup even, because by all accounts, Fromm should be head and shoulders above.
All right, let's go into that running game by DeAndre Swift. And I'm a Florida fan, but I'm not an idiot. Georgia's offensive line better than ours at this point. Ours has gotten better. Georgia's is better. Their running back's better. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, first of all, every time Justin Fields from Ohio State scores a touchdown, you know, Fromm's just wiping his brows. You know, but that running game of Georgia's the last probably 5 or 6 years has always had a devastating running game. And Swift, I mean, he just has got that. Now, who's the other running back? The Holyfield, he graduated.
Yeah, he's going.
Harriet,
yeah. And that's a two-headed monster right there. And it's just, in this Florida-Georgia game, it's going to come down to what, you know, how the Florida defensive line has got to slow up that offensive line of Georgia and hold them to under, I would say, they need to hold them to under 140, 130 yards rushing.
I agree.
And maybe may take a little more than that because they just got to stack 7, 8 guys in the box and just they're from the throw.
And as Dave hit on earlier, you know, you wouldn't know the difference between these two guys if you just, you know, put the blinders on and look at the stats.
Yeah.
I think the reason that is Florida has as big as an advantage as they have in the running game, we have at receivers over their receivers.
Yeah.
We have experience. We have depth. Now, finally, we're getting Kadarius Toney back. So now we have our X factor who can take the slip screens, the bubble screens, handoffs, wildcat. All right, now we got him to go along with Jefferson and Pitts and all these guys that we have all over the field. Swain, you name him. Yep. Swain's the one that ate Auburn up. I mean, he's got a ton of weapons to throw to. Our offensive line has increasingly gotten better as the season rolls on. But at the end of the day, make no mistake about it, Florida's offensive line has to show up.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to play, and they're going to have to play a little bit better than they did at LSU. They played pretty good at Auburn, but Auburn is very, considering who they were blocking, and everybody's seen how they played LSU, I thought they played pretty good in that game.
Yeah.
I thought LSU, they played pretty good for the majority of the game, but then as the game wore on, they started getting a little bit more tired. But they're going to show out this game. Let's talk about the defenses for a second.
Well, Florida, I like Florida's defense. I know they had a couple players, and there's no excuse the weaknesses showed up in the LSU game, but the players out. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think much of Dan Mullen as a coach that took the defensive side of the ball seriously when he was at Mississippi State. But then again, this was Mississippi State. He's at Florida now. He's in a hotbed, and he's getting 4 and 5 stars on both sides of the ball. So give him a couple more years, and with Grantham, they're good now, but this just the future for Florida is really, really bright.
We're really, really solid at every fight. We got arguably them the best corners in the nation.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to argue that. And then we're solid at linebacker with Reese, but I think the key to the game is up front. Campbell, Grenard, Jeremiah Moon, Zuniga. Those are the guys that's going to have to go get Fromm. Fromm is a statue, and everybody remembers last year. People forget this game about last year. I dialed in this game last year, and I broke it down, dissected, and I said, Florida is going to beat these guys. Florida is good enough last year to beat them. And Florida come out of halftime, went down the field, Felipe Franks took the lead on them. But what people fail to realize last year is we were playing with one starter in the secondary. We had 2 go out in the first quarter last year. We were down to one opening day starter in that secondary.
Now, one thing too.
That's why Fromm took Lou up last year.
This is a huge game because the winner of this game is pretty much going to go to Atlanta.
Going to Atlanta.
Because Georgia still has to play Auburn. Now, Florida, I think after this game they've got Vandy, Missouri,
and Vandy,
and I don't see them losing those games. So it's
Missouri's usually pretty tricky, but I don't see us losing it.
Especially after what happened last year with Florida, they should have that game dialed in.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because pretty much, like I said, the winner of this game is going to go to Atlanta. And unless one, 2 of them fall apart, but it's just going to be interesting. The Kirby versus Todd Grantham. Dan Mullen. And I hope Florida. If Florida does one thing, that'll just make me a happy person. I don't mean this wrong, but I'm sick and tired of seeing that 4-out kicker from Georgia. They're selling on campus whatever his name is. On campus, ESPN at the game day store where they're selling little bitty 4 glasses for the kids. A kicker. Are you kidding me?
Dude, you can get those same glasses at Paris Island in the Marine Corps.
I know.
Those are standard military issue Paris Island.
Well, have you seen Rodriguez? Or whatever
Blankenship?
He couldn't be in the Marines if he was the played radar in the new MASH sequel. But anyway, I'm on a rant here, so I'm just.
All right, tell me about
back
Georgia's
to football.
Defense. Tell me about Georgia's defense, Dave.
Well, Georgia's defense has not been the problem this year for Georgia. Georgia's defense has kept them in. Well, I say kept them in games. They've been winning, but just ugly. Georgia's defense has not been the problem. Georgia's defense in the game against Notre Dame, they had Notre Dame off track the entire night. It was the offense that struggled to score points. The South Carolina game, they held South Carolina most of the game. The offense was not giving them the support they needed. Georgia here the last 3-4 weeks has been a lot similar to Auburn. They've been in kind of that same boat of the defense keeping the offense in the game, and the offense just leaving them out to dry, and the defense is out there with their tongues hanging out. So, Georgia's got leaders at every point. Rice is the leader at the linebacker. He's the guy that's been their stud most of the season. And then you got LeCount in the secondary. The one thing, and I think they're a little bit better this year, but the thing under Kirby Smart that's been driving Georgia fans crazy is they can't get a pass rush from the D line. And that's been a story since he's been there. And, I know
We now got Nolan Smith from IMG Academy, who's the #1 defensive end in the nation.
And they've got a defensive coordinator that's new this year, but I mean, this is the same case as under Saban. Kirby Smart's the guy running the defense. He's the guy, yeah. So, something in his process is not working with the D line because it's made some strides this year, but it's not where you want it to be if you're going to be one of the top defenses in the country. So
Saban struggled with that his first few years.
He did. Well, and a lot of that is they don't use the defensive linemen as rushers. A lot of times they're guys that kind of set the edge. They're going to play gap football and they're going to keep people from gashing them. But when you get players that can make a difference, like Alabama did with Quentin Williams, it changes your defense. Well, Georgia's yet to have that guy. They're still playing gap football, and they don't have a defensive end that can get in there and take on that to get the quarterback out of the pocket like they want to, and they rely on linebacker blitzes and rely on zone blitzes. So that's been a problem. But I mean, like I said, you can't downplay what Georgia's defense has done. They're not Georgia's problem right now. The offense has struggled. Obviously in the South Carolina game, Kevin's man Rodrigo was the one, and he's one of the most reliable guys on their team. So, but he let him down in the South Carolina game. But he's the one that takes the blame for missing a field goal. But let's be honest, when you're losing 2017 to South Carolina, that's not the kicker's fault.
Exactly.
So, but the defense is going to present problems for Florida. They're going to have a look for Florida now. I want to go back to something real quick about the offense we were talking about a while ago. We were talking about the quarterbacks being similar and being not being able to tell the difference. One of the things Kyle Trask has Dan Mullen being his play caller. Georgia has James Coley, who probably has already got his backpack maybe ready to go by the end of the season. So, that's a big key too, and a lot of times if a guy comes in there and, maybe he doesn't have you can have a good relationship with the coach, but you may not have a workable relationship with the coach.
Yeah.
To me, Jake Fromm doesn't look like he has a completely workable relationship with Coley, and that showed up this year, and he's, I'm not going to say he's regressed, but he hasn't made improvement.
Right. All right. It's prediction time. I'm going to lead it off, and then I'm going to pass, and then I'm going to let you close it out. Mm-hmm. All right. So when I'm about to break down this game, the scary part to me as a Florida fan is this Georgia defense is for real. He does have edge rushers now, although those guys, especially Nolan Smith's one that's really kind of scary. And I've seen him live play, and I've seen him play at Modern Day last year, which is he's the real deal. But Georgia just hadn't been getting it done on offense. They've been stagnant at best. Swift has run the ball. It's like Kentucky. This is going to be the best defense they've faced, without question. But I think we're going to have a Herculean type effort on our offensive line this week to playing them to move the ball, and we're going to have to run the ball, and we're going to have to run the ball through the But I think the X factor in all that is going to be two things: one, Dan Mullen.
Yes.
Number two, Kadarius Toney's back.
Yeah.
Because his wildcat carries and his speed sweep carries, those are the type things we've been missing from this offense. Yeah. He's a dynamic guy. He will make you miss tackles. He's everybody always wants to say he's a Percy. He's not a Percy. Nobody's a Percy Harvin, but he does just enough to give us that X factor to where you can't key on these other guys. And then Grimes and Jefferson and Swain and Pitts and all these other guys can get going. But it starts up front. It's time. It's time. Georgia's going to lose this football game. Georgia will lose this football game. And I know the LSU game, I was getting the LSU fans riled up. You can ask anybody in this room. That was I hoped Florida would win. This is one of those where I know Florida's going to show up and they're going to show out. And you give Dan Mullen a week to prepare, an off week. Give me the Gators. And this one's not going to be – I don't think it's going to be that close. I think 31-17. It's time for the Gators to step up, put a nail in it. Kirby Smart's never going to win a championship. He's never going to win a championship. He is just like every other Saban disciple there is out there. Oh. They never win the big one. None of them. Everybody goes, Jimbo Fisher. No, Jimbo Fisher was at Auburn before he went to go be with
he wasn't a Saban
the people. Is right. So that none of them will ever win. If you don't believe me, go look at McElwain. You kidding? I wouldn't get on a plane with Jim McElwain, Kirby Smart, or that other idiot over at South Carolina. I'm not even going to say his name. I throw up. I wouldn't get on a plane with
I like that dude. I mean, he's got a good sense of humor.
He's got a sense of humor because he makes an ass of himself when they're getting throttled every week. or he chokes out. One of the two.
I thought the glasses made him look more mature. Though.
Oh God, he looks like somebody's drunk uncle. He looks like Uncle Earl is getting the call plays. Florida, it's time 31-17. This one's not going to be that close. Fromm's going to be in third down line. We stopped Swift.
Yeah.
That's it.
Grantham's got to stop one guy, and then barrel down on him. 31-17 Florida. Kev?
Well, December, I guess 6th or whenever they play the SEC championship game, Jake Fromm's going to be wearing khakis. He's not going to be wearing a Florida Georgia football uniform because they're going to be off that day because they're going to get beat Saturday.
He won't have Florida drive.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, I don't know if he can drive that far to get the tickets to the game because if he can't drive down the field, how's he going to drive to Atlanta?
That's a good point.
But
Rodrigo drive.
now Dan Mullen. Well, anyway, and I'm not a Georgia hater. I just that guy, the kicker, just gets on my nerves. Yeah, so all four of my eyes. But the Florida, you hit the nail on the head. Florida's got to run the ball in between the tackles some. Maybe not the whole game, but
we got to do it enough.
About 15 to 20 snaps at least.
Yep, and do be effective.
Yeah, and one thing I've been critical of Dan Mullen on, he's a great quarterback coach, great play caller, but sometimes he'll call some plays in the ball game. I just don't understand why at crucial points. But I think if he can avoid that and they can keep Swift on the sideline, they'll win this game by maybe, I'm going to say 27-17.
17. All right. Shoot from the hip.
All right. I think that with a week off, I think both these teams are going to be running at full steam ahead. I think you've got two teams that, have not shown their best so far on different reasons. I think Florida, because they've had an extremely tough schedule. I think Florida's played some games that, they could easily be a 8-9-0 team right now if they hadn't, had to go to the swamp, had to go to Death Valley,
Yeah.
and had to deal with some of that. Georgia, I don't know what the reason is why they hadn't hit on all cylinders, because I feel like even though they've got some youth at the skill position on offense, the offensive line easily should be one of the best in the country. I think that this week's going to be the week some of these freshmen are going to have to grow up. I think Lawrence Cager, George Pickens are both going to have big games. I think that if they show up and they're able to stretch the Florida defense, because that's going to be the key, as you said, Florida's got excellent defensive backs, corners. They're going to have to show that they can stretch the field early and get those corners off the line, because if they get on the line and they press up on those freshman receivers and show them what SEC football's about, Fromm's going to have trouble all day. But I think those guys are going to be able to make some plays early. I think they're going to have to set that up to let Swift get loose. You're going to have to throw the ball early and let Swift get loose. And
kind of get us on our heels a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to open up the defense with the deep ball, come back. Swift can run the ball. I mean, that kid's going to be able to make room for himself. On defense, like I said, the defense hasn't been the problem all year. You've got LeCount, you've got the freshman Aziz. Man, this kid's been pressuring the quarterback all year. You're talking about the sack. They're actually on the same track to have as many sacks as they did last year. So I think, but he's had more pressures. Now that may be the key. They may be able to actually get to the quarterback. They may not be getting home, but they're able to affect him. I'm going to say that those freshmen make enough plays. I'm going to say Swift has a big game. They're just going to have to feed him the ball. It's not going to be one where you can try to dance around it. You're going to have to feed Swift and let him make plays for you. And for my man Kevin over there, we're going to call this Rodrigo's Revenge. Rodrigo's Revenge. Last minute field goal. Georgia's 26-24.
He'll have all four eyes focused on that.
Man, this is Average Joe Sports Talk. We're out.